Hello everyone, and welcome to another video in this mini-series where we are taking a closer look at the fleeces of traditional sheep breeds, with today's focus being on the Bluefaced Leicester. And these are certainly a rather curious looking sheep, with a very prominent Roman nose over a rather blue coloured head, although the face isn't actually blue. Instead, it's the result of having very fine white fleece covering a black skin, making the head just look like it's blue. Bluefaces are also rather large sheep, weighing in at around 80 to 120 kilograms, and yet, as they were developed for meat production rather than wool, they only actually produce a rather small fleece that usually weighs between 1 and 2 kilograms. Which does mean that despite the huge popularity of the breed, its wool is still slightly more expensive than that of most other breeds, simply because you have to raise so much sheep in order to get so little fleece. But what a fleece it is, and the fibre of these long wool sheep is extremely popular among spinners for two very good reasons. Number one, it is wonderfully soft and lustrous. And number two, it is incredibly reliable. It has a uniformity across the whole animal, whereas in most sheep breeds, the neck and the rump tends to be a little bit coarser. Not the Blueface though. Their wool is delightfully soft and lustrous no matter which bit of the animal it's come from. But let's take a closer look at the fibre of the Bluefaced Leicester and see what it's really like to work with. And for this, I have two lovely natural shades of comb top. A standard white and a pale greyish brown that's often referred to as oatmeal, with comb top being wool that has already been essentially brushed and prepared for spinning. You can also find Blueface in slightly darker shades of brown and grey, although it is very rare to see the very dark natural tones in anything other than specialist fibre stores. The different colours do all have a fairly similar texture and softness next to each other, although I do tend to find that the white fleece is just that little bit smoother, with a little bit less crimp in the individual fibres. But the difference is so small, it's fine to treat all of the colours of Bluefaced Leicester exactly the same as each other. Now, Bluefaced Leicester are known as a long wool breed, and they can have a staple length of up to 6 inches, but you will find that 3 to 5 is much more common and also much more manageable. I do suspect that because of its high demand, white Blueface does tend to be a little bit shorter than the other colours, but a staple length of 4 inches is perfectly easy to work with. The wool also has a typical micron count of between 24 and 28, meaning the Bluefaced Leicester is easy and itch-free to wear by all but the most sensitive of people. It also has a sort of slipperiness to it that is reminiscent of silk. It's not quite that soft when it's been spun up, but it has a good drape to it. It sort of flops and is rather free-moving, rather than holding its shape like a lot of the more coarse wools do. When it comes to spinning though, that very soft and slippery nature can make it a tad more challenging than something with a bit more bite to it, like Shetland or Jacob for example. And you will likely find that it takes a moment or two to get used to the fact that you need just a little bit more spin in your single to keep it together, especially if you are spinning very fine. Once you get into the flow though, it is a wonderfully easy wool to spin, as the fibres are very consistent and they have an even crimp right the way from one end to the other. And because of this predictability, it makes it much easier to get a consistent weight or thickness in what you are spinning. And the white wool is especially easy and consistent. I do find that the greys and the browns can have slightly more variation in them, as I found that the darker fibres can be slightly more grippy than the paler ones. You may find them pulling out sort of little chunks as you're spinning away, and you may have to pause in your spinning every now and again to thin out some of the fatter bits. But even this is very minor, and I really am just nitpicking. For the most part, Blueface is a very simple spin. If you are an absolute beginner spinner though, looking for that very first breed to try, then I would just go for the white shades of Bluefaced Leicester to start with, just because it's that teeny tiny little bit more reliable and less prone to clumping or suddenly pulling a chunk of wool out of your roving. And because Bluefaced Leicester is also so very soft and at a very good price, it can usually be made very practically for clothing as well as blankets or textiles. Although I do find that because of that extreme uniformity that the fibres have, it doesn't have very much of a halo once it's been spun, and so it can be slightly cooler to the touch and not quite so warm as other breeds. But again, this is pure nitpicking. Blueface is a very nice wool to work with, and well worth trying whether you're new to spinning or if you're an old hand. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video taking a closer look at Bluefaced Leicester wool. Happy spinning everyone, and I will see you again soon.